Good afternoon. I am Peter Wuenschel, Chair of the Education Division of the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Education Connections. Education Connections is a monthly webinar hosted by the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce. The mission of the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce is to be champions of business success and quality of life in our community. The foundation of business success begins with the region's educational system, which includes pre-K through the highest professional degrees. This webinar series showcases the people who lead our institutions. We ask these leaders to share issues facing our educational institutions now and in the future. Today I have with me Harv Hartman, who is Chair of the Education and Workforce Development Committee of Bay Area Houston Economic Partnership, or BAHAP. Welcome, Harv.
Hey, thank you, Peter. It's good to be with you.
It's good to see you. I appreciate you being here today. I've been on your committee, so I knew a little bit about you, but I want you to share with our audience what you do and how you contribute to education. So
Happy to do it.
Okay, fantastic. So I want to begin today by first asking you, as I do all my guests, tell us about yourself and specifically describe the journey you took to be involved with BAHAP and how you became chair of their Education and Workforce Development Committee.
That's a good question, and it got me thinking. It goes back a long ways, Peter. I've probably been a perennial joiner of things. It maybe go all the way back to coaching little league soccer and baseball and Indian guides and that sort of thing. But in the sense of the grown-up version of that, it probably started in some measure with your predecessor, Huey Barnett, and Communities in Schools. I was on your board of directors in the late '80s, early '90s. I was also on the Clear Creek Education Foundation and part of their work and their mission. And so those kinds of things kind of became part of it. Served on the E.A. Smith YMCA board, church boards, things like that. So a number of them. So it came relatively easy, and education has always been something that's very near and dear to me. For the BAHAP piece of it, I've been really associated with BAHAP nearly 30 years now, and it goes back to my time at NASA. I was the director of HR at the time, and my boss and I said we talked a bit and agreed that this would be a good thing to get involved with. So I started with BAHAP back when Jim Reinhardtson was leading it, and then as Bob Mitchell came along, working with him. I got wrangled into a conversation by no other than Glenn Friedman, who we all know. Be careful when he calls you and says, let's sit down and have a conversation. It was he and I and Tom Brooker and Jim Reinhardtson, and said, we really need to have a BAHAP committee focused on education. And Tom agreed to lead it if I would be his number two. So I said, sure, I'll do that. So in about 2003, we started an Education and Workforce Development Committee, and Tom chaired that for a couple of years, and then he sailed off into the sunset, and I've been leading that committee now since 2006, so right at 16 years.
Wow, fantastic. But you've been involved in the Education Workforce Development Committee you're going on 20 years.
Yes, I'm looking for my 20-year pin.
Hey, okay, well, we need to talk to that new guy from BAHAP.
Yeah, we'll do that.
So, Harv, we have several things to talk about today, but I'd like to start up here somewhere. Before we get into specifics, will you please give us a broad overview and history of BAHAP's Education and Workforce Development Committee?
Sure. BAHAP's been CLADEF Development Foundation, and then it moved to BAHAP, and BAHAP really is focused, much like the chamber is, on improving the quality of life here. Our focus tends to be on doing what we can to stimulate economic development activity, which provides jobs, which provides good things in our area. that help make this a better place to live, work, and play.
Mhm.
Specifically, the Education Foundation, Education and Workforce Development Committee. If I could have the first slide, please, Sloan.
There we go.
We put this together. It is a collection of education leaders. And as you can see there, we have 7 leaders. We have the superintendents of 7 ISDs in the area. And they have 127,000 students that they're responsible for. So when you wake up in the morning and think you've got a lot to do, think about these folks. They are special people. We also have the chancellors or presidents of 3 community colleges. That's 40,000, mostly San Jac. It's about 30,000 San Jac and about 5,000 each for Alvin and College of the Mainland. And then 3 universities are part of our committee. Mike Fossum from Texas A&M Galveston, folks from UH Clear Lake, Dr. Richard Walker is frequently there, UTMB in Galveston, and we're talking 15,000 students there. About 10, it's probably, I probably have got that, should be probably closer to about 20 because it's about 10,000 at Clear Lake and about 5,000 at UTMB, 2,500 at Texas A&M Galveston. We've got business leaders, members of our BAHEP who have an interest in education and want to have and bring a perspective to it. They ask good questions. Why are you doing this? How are we doing this? Why aren't you doing da 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 da? And we have community leaders, nonprofits like yourself, Peter, small business owners, city leaders, that sort of thing. So it's a rich mix. We will typically have anywhere from 15 to 30 people around the table for our monthly meetings.
And I absolutely appreciate being on the committee, and they have been very, very productive. I think I've been on the committee for maybe a little over 10 years. So I know some of the initiatives, but would you please share with us some of the initiatives
Sure.
that the committee has done over the years?
Sure. The main thing probably at the core of it is we want to make sure that we have good working relationships built between the people in the educational leaders, the business leaders, the community leaders. These are the kind of people you should know well enough that you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I think I've got a problem in this area. Can you help? Do you know something about? Or I need somebody from your sphere of influence, that sort of a thing. So we try to build those working relationships. So we're on a first name basis with all these folks. We give all of our members an opportunity, I think, to see a broader perspective, not only what's happening here in the Bay Area, but regionally and statewide. For instance, we'll have people from Raise Your Hand, Texas, or groups like that will come and talk to us about education from a larger perspective. We'll talk to workforce people from other sectors. We may talk to the Greater Houston Partnership and some of the work they're doing, that kind of thing. So we look for larger perspectives there. We sometimes take our members out to go on a road trip where we want to see a brand new school. What's happening in schools these days? We want to go to places like the Kirk Lewis Career and Technical High School in Pasadena to see some real state-of-the-art preparation of the next generation of working folks. We go to workforce development centers. A good one case there would be like the Maritime Center that San Jac has to produce workers for the maritime workforce. So we'll do that kind of thing. And then we do major assessments of workforce development needs and capabilities. About every 3 or 4 years, we will go through the 5 major sectors within Bay Area Houston: petrochem, maritime, healthcare, tourism and recreation. Which one am I missing, Peter? Aerospace, obviously. And we bring in leaders, business leaders and working level leaders to sit around the table and have 2 questions for them. One, how are our schools doing at turning out future workers for you? We want to know, shoot straight with us. How are they doing? What are they missing? What do they need? And number 2 is what's coming down the pike. 5 to 10 years from now, what's your workforce going to look like? What are you going to need differently? What do we need to get ready for? And we have some back and forth exchanges out of that. That, Peter, the good example out of that was the maritime one. When we sat down with maritime leaders, they said, unless you grew up in a family with a maritime job, nobody knows about us. We sail over the horizon and we're gone. And we don't. And San Jack stepped up to the plate and is producing really strong workforce, particularly for tugboat and barge industry, but also for seagoing jobs, blue water jobs, as well as brown water jobs. So we do that. And we've done Peter, you'll remember, we've just finished up one big assessment here of the largest workforce in our area. Who do you think that would be? Turns out it's healthcare is the largest employer in the area. Our timing was probably less than stellar. As you remember, Peter, we gathered 50 leaders, education leaders and healthcare senior leaders in a room at UTMB's Clear Lake campus in the middle of January of 1920 and said, what do you need? What do you need? And how are we doing? And boy, it got some activity going in a hurry. And we said, man, we've got to do a full up assessment of that. We want to find out what the schools are doing. We want to find out what the healthcare industry needs. Let's get cracking at that. So we spent the month of February getting a plan together, and we were all ready to go when March 12th hit. And Governor Abbott said, I'm sorry, the state is locked down. So we went into a long period there where we had to put that on ice, primarily because the students who were looking for healthcare careers could not get into the hospitals. They just, they couldn't risk them getting sick. They couldn't have them bringing anything in, so they shut down basically the clinical education kinds of things. And on the other side of it, healthcare workforce was going 120 miles an hour and didn't have time for us to be bothering them with questions and sorting out what the future looks like. So we put that on ice for a while, but last when did we start? Earlier this year, late last year, early this year, we tested the waters, and both sides said, yeah, now's a good time to do this. So we went back in and we did a complete assessment there, and we have completed that. We reported that out to our committee. My hope, Peter, is that we will set up a meeting in January, which will look like the January of 2020 meeting, where we will say, this is what we've heard. Where do we go from here? Kind of a thing. So we'll close down. So I think what we learned out of that was we got lots of young people who want to be in the healthcare business, and they're being well prepared. And they've identified some new needs for us, and they've committed to making sure that they get plenty of clinical experience. As an example, they say you can teach all you want in the classroom. There's no substitute for being at the bedside before you find out whether you're really cut out for this business. Sure. There's no substitute for being responsible for 8 people at the same time who are sick, and you got to figure out how to take care of them. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll probably do for probably about this next year or so, doing another roundtable of all of our sectors just to see what's changed since we did it 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. That's something that I have really appreciated about this committee, is getting the businesses together, getting the workforce together, with the especially the community colleges, with healthcare, because I know it's from those dialogues that San Jacinto and College of the Mainland both now have an MSN program, which is a master's in nursing, or I'm sorry, a bachelor's in nursing.
Right.
Which, for a community college, they typically stick with certifications and associate degrees. So I think that's been a major win for this region.
Right. Peter, let me build on that and say we owe a special thanks again to our partnership. When we realized there's a shortage of nurses, Dr. Bill Staples, the previous president of UH Clear Lake, stepped up and said to Brenda Hellier at San Jacinto College, I will be happy to support you if you want to go for we have a bachelor's in nursing, And some people might look at it as competition. There's plenty of room for both of us. We will support your request to do that. And that's a big deal. So when we get partnerships, it comes out of these kind of collaborations that we have. And we've got a lot of talent in this area, particularly in healthcare. I looked at the numbers that came out of our healthcare workforce assessment.
Mhm.
UTMB graduated 400 nurses this last year. Think about that. That's there aren't many communities
Great.
that can say that or be that proud of their contribution to it. And those folks live among us. Their trainers and teachers live among us.
That's
Be
right.
sure to thank them.
Absolutely. Very good. Appreciate it. So another major initiative I know that the committee has worked on has to do with the priorities and the agenda for the Texas legislature with regard to education. Can you speak to that, since we have a session coming up in January? And,
Sure.
well.
And thanks. There's the first slide. Thank you, Sloan. I think, again, here, this is another collaboration thing that has worked very nicely. For a number of sessions, BAHEP has partnered with the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce to take teams to Austin to go talk to our legislators, to talk to them here. We do this very much jointly between the chamber and the partnership. And it's a wonderful thing to see it come together. We hit a lot of different things that are important to our region, but the biggest piece of it tends to be around education. Sherry Sweeney, the godmother of this at the chamber of this effort, has just done a wonderful job of helping organize these things. We typically will take probably about 50 people up there in February to go to Austin. To talk to our legislative folks, and many of the people who staff this are chamber people. We love that. We have found the way we do it when we go talk to the legislators is about education. We prefer to have a business person articulate it, but supported by a very knowledgeable educator. For some reason, they don't listen as well as they should to the educators, or they hear them through a different channel. But when they hear it from business people about how important it is, it makes a big difference. And thanks especially to the chamber for all the people who have donated a day to go with us and be part of that. So in preparation for something like that, we sit down. We started this last spring and summer putting together the legislative agenda. What things are important to our region? What's important to us? And it breaks down into three pieces. I've got the K through 12 agenda here, and when we finish this, I'll show you the community college and the university one. The K through 12 one, Sherry and I discovered a long time ago. The laundry list of things that are important that education needs from the Texas legislature is about 40 things long. We don't have much success when we take a laundry list of 40 things in. We do have a success when we take a shorter list. And so we try to limit it to 3. This year we added 1. We just couldn't avoid that. We added 4, and it's priority number 1. It has to do with school safety and security. We certainly found out all too realistically the effect on the community of the Santa Fe shooting incident a few years back, and we experienced it again with the Uvalde event this last May. So school safety and security is a very high priority, and for anybody who's watching this, you ought to be proud of your school leaders, your educational leaders. They are working diligently to solve that, and I'll tell you what, they are scrounging money from everywhere to do all the right things. They do not want to be the next one on the 6 o'clock news. So they're working. We know you're doing audits. You're going to do the Texas Education Agency is going to do audits about how well you're preparing for that. I think our folks will do well. with that. But we need support. We need money. We need. It costs a lot to put officers in schools. It costs a lot to harden schools, to put new doors and locks in and things like that. All camera systems, all those kinds of things. So when you think about school safety and security, sometimes I went to a one-room school as a K through 12, K through 8, 1 through 8 person. I talked to Deanne Powell and Troy McCarley at Pasadena. They have 69 campuses. Pasadena High School alone has 8 buildings on it. School safety and security is a very big issue, and they take it hard, and they've got a lot of hard work to do. The other 3 priorities that we're going to talk about with the legislators are funding is a difference maker. We know that. Texas, for one reason or another, it doesn't put as much money in education as most other states. We're kind of down on the numbers in that. Raise your hand, Texas. We'll give you good markers on something like that. Part of it comes from property taxes locally, and people do not like high property taxes. Part of it comes from the state, and that comes from tax money. Taxes, education, and healthcare take up about 85% of the Texas state budget. So it's already a big amount. And so they're always looking hard at whether or not to increase that. But it does make a difference. We know it makes a difference. Tied to that one, we're concerned about teacher training. We're concerned about teacher retention and replacement. The pipeline for new teachers is getting thinner and thinner, and that ought to be a concern we care about. Priority 3 is we support local control. School districts need to be able to set their bond elections and things like that. When's the right time for them to do it? When's the best time to do it economically? That sort of thing. We sure want to see that. And accountability matters is another thing. There'll be a lot of talk about vouchers, and there'll be talk about charter schools. And so our take is you can talk about that, but the same rules ought to apply to everybody. Accountability for everybody. Our schools probably have around our 7 districts average between 11 and 13% of their kids are special needs cases. I would ask anybody who supports vouchers and charter schools, are you doing your share in this regard? So make sure accountability stays the same for everybody. I'm running out of time here, Peter. Let me move to the next chart here.
Okay.
And community schools, community colleges. I think here we're going to see probably a big win this legislative session, thanks in large part to the work of Senator Larry Taylor, who just finished his term, who certainly helped with K through 12 reform a session ago and helped set up reform for community college funding for this session very well. There is a new model that a commission put together over the past year that how we would fund community colleges. Brenda Hillier particularly has played a very large role in that, but Robert Exley at Alvin and Warren Nichols at Community College, College of the Mainland have also been players in this, and it will shift funding to more based on outcomes. How many pipe fitters are you turning out? How many welders? How many med techs? How many nurses? That sort of a thing. You're going to see more than just how many classes do you hold, how many people you're turning out. There's an emphasis on supporting dual credit programs, which many of our districts have, and we want to see that and helping the pipeline to the 4-year schools. Central to this whole big agenda of all 50 community colleges in the state of Texas is something special needs to be done for smaller community colleges and particularly rural ones. They have a harder time. They often don't have the big business space that produces the jobs or the support for programs. So there's been some arrangement made for that. Everybody has signed on to that. I think there's a strong support for this whole thing. There's also support for helping first-time students and lower-income students be able to afford college. So if we can hold this thing together, I think there's a good chance that this will pass, and it'll be a once-in-a-generation shifting in the way they're funded and put them on a much better footing. Universities, excuse me. At the UHCL level, I'll mention 2 things that are near and dear to Dr. Walker's heart. He is particularly interested in achieving funding for a new STEM building to do STEM education on the UHCL campus, and the renovation of the Delta building behind that. If we can bring that off, that's a big ticket item. And another one is they have a Center for Autism and Development Disabilities that's doing some wonderful work. It's well regarded. It's gotten nice attention from around the state for what they do. I think the terrain is right to see expanded funding for that, and he's really seeking some extra there. UTMB, we've got 4,000 healthcare workers down there that are just amazing, doing amazing people. As you know, those folks did some amazing work throughout the pandemic, and they're turning out nurses and doctors at a prodigious rate. They live in our neighborhoods. They work. They buy stuff in our stores. They are our friends. So we certainly need to see that they're funding for healthcare, for the healthcare resources, the initiative to create more workforce. That's a very big deal with them. Texas A&M Galveston, 2,500 people focused on the maritime industry. Maritime is huge for this area of the country, particularly for this region, the Port of Houston, and all these warehouses you see going up around here. They're supported by ships and barges and coming in here with that. Part of their big pressure at Texas A&M Galveston is they want to keep tuition low. So they're looking forward to a new training ship to help with that.
Yeah, fantastic. So Harv, every time I hear you talk about our educational institutions, I am reminded how blessed we are in this community.
Yes, we are.
We have some outstanding K through 12 public education. We have San Jacinto College, College of the Mainland, or the community colleges just do so much for our workforce.
Right.
We've got 3 major universities. We are blessed in this community. I don't think there's many communities that
there are not many regions that have this much vitality in it. What it does for our whole region, it makes it a very vibrant kind of a region. And when you see those educators, thank them. They're doing good work.
Absolutely. And thank our legislators who support.
Right. Exactly. And encourage them to continue supporting. Exactly.
So, and I want to thank you, Harv Hartman. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your work in furthering the mission of K through 12, community colleges, universities, and the workforce. This has been so beneficial. Thank you very much.
Happy to do it.
Okay. Thanks, Harv. Well, thank you for joining Education Connections, hosted by the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce. Please join us on Thursday, January 12th at 12 noon, when we will hear from another great leader from one of our great education institutions. Thank you. See you in 2023.